Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a top 8 breakdown of the Latin American launch of the Battle Spirit Saga card game. And this was a little bit delayed for getting this video. It did, happen during the same weekend as all the other ones. It was a little bit trickier to get the list, but shoutouts to both Cosmic as well as Joaquin Flores, who also got top 8 for this event as well. Would not be able to make this video, or at least get the data out there without you guys, so thank you guys very much for that. And I do just want to mention that this was a little bit of a different format in the sense that they did not get like the same allocation of boxes as other regions did. So if you look at some of the ratios and they're a little bit peculiar, that is part of the reason why specifically like Ice Shield is not a 4 of in a lot of these decks, because strictly they did not have it, is my understanding for that. So something to take into consideration for this event in these deck lists, but I do want to go over them and just go in general. And looking at this top 8 as well, we did have Juan Soto with Purple Soul Control. It was a Purple Soul Control mirror match in the finals there. And then White Control took up a good chunk of this top 8, and then 2 of the Red Siegwurm Nova. And again, like I think like Siegwurm is a little bit standard or like straightforward for what it is, but I think a lot of people are running the deck. It's almost like mathematically impossible for the deck to not top when I think like so much of the field is running the deck anyways. Purple's really great, and then also, honestly, I think purple is a really strong card, like color, when we go into the format in general, and when we get more deep into, okay, what does this deck do? How do we counter it? How do we play around it? Purple kind of gets a little bit trashed on a little bit. Once I think as we get further into this meta, purple's going to be less and less good for it. But man, white's super great at everything it does in this game, besides winning quickly at times, but I think there's a good reason why this is also one of the most representative kind of archetypes in this top 8 as well. So since we only have 3 different decks, we're just going to look at the top placing essentially deck for each color. So we're going to go into this first one here. So here's the first place list for Juan Soto here, and it is on the Purple Soul Control. And I like this deck a lot. Obviously, I was playing purple myself when I was doing our own launch event in it, and going through this list and kind of the differences. Also, I should have said some decks don't have side decks. I'm sorry, I looked for them. We couldn't get all of them. So main decks for everything's here. If there's a side deck provided, I got it. But not every deck has a side deck for you. But one thing I think that I've kind of identified was just how strong this card can be, especially into white. Like this card is very, very good into white, specifically for it. So essentially what you can do is you can give this 3 cores, and you can give it it has Blood Curse, and that just means you get to attack with it, which means either you get to deal damage, and you get, if your opponent, it either does 3 things. 1, your opponent blocks and it gets rid of it, like it's smaller and you get hit over their thing. 2, they block and it's bigger, which means that you get to use the Blood Curse effect for this, which is very, very good, which means you get to do essentially another attack, so they never ever want to do that. 3, it just goes 3 and you do damage to your opponent. So all 3 of those are very, very strong in the late game format, especially against something like white that they kind of need all those things to kind of have, like, that's pretty much what it is. It stalls out, and so if you have just a consistent way to keep hitting and doing damage, this card is very good, I think, in that matchup. So that's something I need to kind of identify and try out a little bit more in my own personal builds of purple. But I think like 1 or 2 of this card can be very good, and it really shows how it kind of does in a matchup like that. Otherwise, kind of standard stuff. Cursed Dragon Baculus, very great in a lot of ways. Beldegor at 4, Mordred at 3. I've been liking Mordred less and less. I think it's very easy to play around this card. The only reason I like it still is because you can use it with Beldegor, but honestly, like the 4-drop Spider, I like a little bit more, especially since it doesn't have a when summon effect, so it doesn't proc off that, which is nice. We also do have the Camelot Knight, the Dark Lancer. Again, like this is both this and the Dark Knight. Just the fact that they can proc your Starblessed draws are very, very tricky for that. Like, you get punished by your opponent drawing, 4 cards a lot of times for you just trying to play a spirit. So those are just 2 things. Like it's just kind of rough for these guys. But you do get a card draw for this guy, and like it's a 4 again for Beldegor. But something that in moving forward, I have to like identify that these when summons do come at a hefty cost a lot of the time, and if you're going against red a lot of the time, you do have to be careful about that. Netherworld Depths as the only Nexus there as well. You were, was lucky enough to get 4 Ice Shields as well, very strong there. Burning Force at 3, Deadly Balance, Core Theft, Dark King Pendicles, a Dragonaga Assassin, which I think I need to probably play this one a little bit more. I think that it is, the fact that it has curse and draw is great. Curse is also like a pretty good way to get around like white blockers at time, which is nice. Mumura, Purple Smoke Valley. Oh, we have two sets of Nexus. My apologies. And then Core Drain. I personally don't like Core Drain a lot because it selects one of your opponent's exhausted and removes 3, which is not super great. Maybe it's good against like aggressive decks at times, but this is really specific on what you do, and I'd rather like, I don't know. It's not super cool for what I mean. That's the same thing with Mordred, right? You select something exhausted and do it. So I'd rather just play Mordred, even though like I don't like Mordred all the time with the one summon effect. Like it just seems like it gets more value than the Core Drain at times. But this also can be used against something like if they're attacking with something, you can Core Drain and you can stop at mid attack, which is kind of nice. So it kind of like it can be like Deadly Balance but better at times too. But it's something you do have to. I would have to make sure like I wasn't playing against white, and then if I was playing against something really aggressive, this is a really good way to do that, because if they have like a bunch of weenies they're attacking with that have like 1 or 2 cores on it, you can really kind of take advantage of it. But I don't know, I'll see if I like this card again, but it's fine. It's pretty cheap for what it is, and where they go into the reserve. It's not trash like Core Theft either, but. Anyways, that's my analysis for this deck. I really do like purple. I do think that it does have a lot of weaknesses when it comes to counterplay, and we'll have to see if that kind of develops as the set 1 meta develops as well. But again, congrats to Juan Soto for their first place finish. Next up, we do have Carlos's top 4 Red Nova Siegwurm, and this is honestly pretty standard for what we were seeing here in North America. I don't have a lot to talk about this deck specifically, especially since the ratios look pretty identical to almost. I feel like I've inputted this deck list at least once before based on what the ratios are. So, which is really interesting too, because these were concurrent events. These were across the world. So chances are that they didn't have any crosstalks for what these deck lists look like, but really cool that at 2 different events, I'm almost positive that this is a 50-50 list that I've already kind of looked at before. But going on into it, we do have 4 of the Nova, obviously, with the other Siegwurm here, 2 Andromeda, which I kind of like a little bit more than 2, but what it is. And it is running the Pterosaur Emperor Beast package 2, which honestly, this is still like a really, really strong card for what it is. It's a little bit more like early aggression, kind of like a big boss monster for that. But since this is able to be so cheap and very easy to get out, like Siegwurm's also kind of like a mid-range kind of way to get into the late game because you heal and you're also able to do a board clear with this guy. This is just kind of like I get to be really aggressive early game and it's kind of poking my opponent a lot. So we have the Oviraptidon, the Horn Grizzly, and the Dinoman Aandroidd, which are all of your Emperor Beasts there. And then also the Blade Dino Parasaur as well. So pretty easy to get these reductions on there. So if you have 2 of these out, that just means that this counts as it counts as 2 symbols. So you just have to play this for 4. So essentially 5 with the core itself, and then you only have Pterosaur's Emperor Beast, so everything's treated as a level 3. So great here. The confront on this guy too just means that you're able to be like a 13k. By attacking with this, which means it's very hard for your opponent to do anything about it. Also kind of paired up with Fear Score Horn Grizzly as well. That just means like this is really great for doing some board control as well, which is very strong for the deck. Everything else I think is pretty strong. Red just has like a generically good amount of cards. So Volcanic Canyon, Starblast Draw, Volcanic Break, Burning Force, Charge Draw. I think all these Nexuses and Magic cards are pretty self-explanatory. A lot of decks really tech these cards in as it is. So if it's on your color, you'll probably really want to play it. Also lucked out with the 4 Absolute Ice Shields as well. And that's kind of all I want to talk about this. So not a lot of talk about this deck. I think it's probably a good deck for a lot of people to be like their first deck into the format. It's very, very strong for what it is, and I think it's going to continue being there. Even if it's maybe not the best deck, I think it's definitely going to be like the gatekeeper for the format, I think, in a lot of ways. So there is Carlos's deck there. And then lastly for today, we do have our top 4. This is Felipe's White Control. Even though this is kind of more, I would say this is kind of more like tempo-y for what it is. I just didn't want to make another subcategory in my deck list and stuff. So you can call me out for being lazy for this one, but it's pretty unique for this one too. I've seen like a couple builds for it, like this being like more just tempo based, which kind of reminds me of a top 4 list in North America as well. Probably could have been called tempo for what it is, but Elk is such a good card, even on the offense kind of side, which is great. Elephant is too. This is such a good. I love this Elephant. He's really just been good time and time again for just a lot of decks. As long as you get into like the mid game, which as long as you're not playing like a hyper aggro build, this does a lot for you. You see like you both have like the 1 drop, which can become free, the 2 drop, which can be almost free, which again, this can be a 5k for 2, which is actually pretty hard to get rid of on offense and defense side. Valkyrie Mist, which is good for tempo. The Ice Maiden, 2 of, to help you survive to the late game. When the Spears blocks, return all the Spears that cost 2 or less fear to their hand. Opponent Spears, so this being just like a nice little blocker for us too. The Dinosaur Harrier Turbo Rex as well, which is a machine beast, which is relevant for this too. So 6 or more, so this counts as 2 or 3 white symbols. So if you have this out, you do have to ascend with a 3 or more, which could be like an Ice Maid, which could be a Pegasaur, which could be the Glass Bear. I guess not a lot, but during your opponent's attack step, you may select one of your opponent's spirits that at the start of the step. If possible, that spirit must attack first, which is nice because it just forces like your 1 block effects. And then also when the spirit attacks, select one of your opponent's spirits that does not have ascend and return it to their hand. So being able to get like this is just like a really, really good tempo play, I feel like, a lot of time. And I think there is like a room for a deck that is kind of like you just kind of double down on the city here, and then you can get out like a Turbo Rex or your Newman Guard really, really early into the game and get like a lot of value from that. This isn't maybe that build, but there's that. And then also Durham Dyna being able to just kind of end your turns and get some end the game. You pay the Spirit Soul Core, select one of your white spirits for each white Nexus each Nexus either player controls cannot be blocked during this turn. So you can just, if you have 2 Nexuses up and your opponent has 1, you can select 3 things and they can't be blocked at all, which is a really good way just to end the game overall. So, and then also when the spirit would be destroyed by your opponent's effect, you may play a core to keep this on the field, which is pretty strong. It's only on level 2 or 3, so you have to have at least 3 cores for it. But again, this can be very, very good for ending the game. But in the Nexus are good. Rocket City is such an annoying card in a lot of ways. You do have to put 2 cores on it, but man, it pays for itself very quickly against a lot of decks that like to draw. And there's also the Heaven Piercing Castle, so you see like a lot of Nexuses in this build too. When your opponent draws outside the draw step, you can pay the Soul Core to draw this card, to draw a card, and also during your attack step, when a spirit with this spirit block effects attacks, you may place up to 2 cores from your trash onto it. And this one I don't really, I guess it like gets you ramped too. You have to put 2 cores on it itself, so it's not like, you have more cores that you can be using for like magic cards, but when you're only running the Dream Bomb as your only magic card, because also guess what, there's no Ice Shield in this deck either, which is, I think, just kind of shows like this is more of an aggressive kind of tempo build as well. So it doesn't really, it wants to be the one to try to pressure for game first, and because of that, you're not as worried about using Ice Shield as well, which again, I think more decks will kind of start leaning towards that. If they are more aggressive, they'll kind of shed the Ice Shield safety block, but we'll have to see if that is true as well. But really cool. I like this. This is probably more of the build of white that I would play that's more tempo based, being able to get out your guys a little bit cheaper. And like this card's really great. And the only, there's a lot of Nexus removal, which really stinks for something like this. But if you can, establish this, and then you're able to get out a Newman Guard or just a Turbo Rex, which is a little bit tricky with the Ascend at times, but I think that can be a really good strategy. So again, this is Felipe's list here, and that's just all we're going to cover for this video. Again, if you guys want to see any of these lists or any of the lists from any of the other of the launch events, they're going to be on my website, Eggman Events, which are linked in the description below. And again, thank you so much to Cosmic as well as Joaquin for helping me with these lists to make sure that they're on the website as well. So again, that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.
Damn it. Damn it.